Uh, the Transformer was an answer to a series of explorations being done several years ago in the field of automatic translation. So the task of translating text from, let's say, English to French was being done by a form of neural network called a recurrent network, and then it was upgraded with a component called an attention mechanism, and then transformers were a demonstration of the fact that you only need attention mechanisms and basically very little else. So my point is that um, they found, I don't want to quite say by accident, but by accident, that translating a request from English into code is just another translation task.
Hmm.
So what they found was that this thing is ridiculously good at writing software. And uh, in fact, the Transformer's ability to crank out coherent and well-formed programming language output is somewhat sensible when you consider the fact that programming languages are still a language. They're something that we use for communicating with the computer, but by definition, they're much less ambiguous and much easier to sort of gather the nuances of than human languages. So honestly, a like it a computer would have a much easier time dealing with a computer language than it would with English. So if it can already do translations from French to English, translations from French to Python, sorry, from Python to English, sorry, from English to Python, actually it does work both ways. Um, are kind of a piece of cake by comparison. So let me give you an example, and I'm going to pick an example, much as before, of a highly complex technical field that itself requires a ton of outside knowledge. Specifically, I'm going to ask it write a Python function that computes an orbital transfer from Earth to Mars given a launch date. This is an this is a pretty complex task. Not only does it require programming acumen, but it requires quite sophisticated mathematics as well as a solid grasp of physics. If
Right.
I'm, I dare say I'm not a shabby programmer myself, but if I was given an assignment to write this problem, it would take me several days at minimum just to perform the requirements gathering and discussion with subject matter experts in the field in order to even know what algorithms to write.
I
So,
just want to say, as you start to see this code get generated here programmatically by ChatGPT, I think many people in the audience are looking at this and their feeling is, my God, this is generating incredibly sophisticated code, and it's explaining it and commenting it along the way. It's a pretty shocking thing because this is something that most people think of as a highly technical, field that requires a tremendous amount of education and experience, and you just see it spitting out code uh, orders of magnitude faster than even the best human programmer could ever attempt.
100%. Google, the company, has a series of entrance exams to gauge the rank at which new programmers are hired. This software, GPT-4 in particular, the version 4 model, passes their level 3 entrance exam right out of the box. I think when I worked there, I think I was level 4. So, just to put things in perspective. Now, the I this has already had a dramatic impact on the software development industry. The kind of things that would take teams of programmers days to do now take a single programmer with a single chat window open, a few minutes at most. I've used this ubiquitously in my own software development. The kind of like I usually use it for the kind of one-off tasks, write a quick function that'll do this, or like write a data transform that'll do this. The kind of thing that in past positions I might have spun off to an intern. But whereas an intern comes back to me after a course of several hours or several days, this thing comes back to me in minutes. Now, it's worth noting that the software that it produces doesn't always function. It does have bugs. But There's a system that OpenAI has been talking about, and that, frankly, a lot of programmers, including myself and some of my partners, have stumbled on of our own accord, is that you can run the software generation capabilities of GPT in a loop, where what you do is you have it write a test, write a piece of code to pass that test, and then you have an external framework run that code with the test, and then produce a result, feed that result back into GPT saying, okay, I ran it and here's the result. And then GPT on its own will say, oh, it looks like that's not what I wanted. Here's a fix to the function, then produces a new version of the function, plug it right back into the operational framework, and then just keep looping that until GPT says, okay, yes, it works now.
By the way, for folks who don't have software development backgrounds, this is essentially the way it works today. You have human coders write code. It has bugs in it. You have unit testing. You have user acceptance testing. You have all of these test cases that get structured. You have expected results and actual results, and you modify the code based on the test cases. What you're talking about here is the ability to programmatically construct essentially a feedback loop where the code gets dynamically written, tested, and then modified based on the test results, so that ultimately that entire process is essentially streamlined straight through by the software itself, by the AI algorithm.
Exactly. And the fact that it works so well is like I've been in this industry for a long time, and I'm while being very hesitant to say to attribute things like, oh, it's thinking, or oh, it's understanding, without I'm trying very hard to not use that verbiage.
Right.
But I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The
Well, because it looks like it's thinking. Now, we know it's not sentient in the sense that humans are, but it certainly looks based, I mean, this is the idea of a Turing test. It certainly looks, based on the input and the output, it certainly looks like thought.
It's something that the question of whether or not it constitutes genuine thought ends up being extremely complicated. But I
Yeah.
will offer this. We the academic examples that I presented earlier were intentionally chosen because what we do in academia is we test students with essay writing, and with like in the case of PhD defenses, we test them by actively like challenging their ideas on the fly and seeing whether or not they can defend them. Um, and by virtue of doing so, we determine whether or not they have a genuine understanding of the subject underneath the hood. In cryptography, there's this concept of zero knowledge proof.
Yeah.
The idea is that a result can look random, but if the random result is correct an extraordinarily large number of times, then you have to conclude that whatever is generating that result is not in fact a random process, but in fact does actually have some underlying information that relates to that relates to the generated material.
By the way, a quick plug for Real Vision Crypto. If you haven't already seen, I did an interview with Silvio Micali, who was one of the co-creators of the zero knowledge proof algorithm back in the 1980s. A great conversation. He's a Turing Prize winner. Fantastic conversation. If you want to go check that out, a little bit of context on zero knowledge proofs.
When it comes to business insurance, I need it like that. I'm Alex Mazukin, host of the DIY home renovation YouTube channel, Mr. Build It. I don't have time to spend an entire day at some office shopping around for business insurance. That's why I go with Next Insurance. Next